Hello, 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 everyone. Happy Friday. It's that time of the week. It's time for the Security Token Show. We're your host. I'm Herwig, happy Konings, and joined as always by Kyle Sonlin. How are you, buddy?
Herwig, I am great. I missed you last week.
Good to be back.
The reviews are in, and while they do like my presentation, it just doesn't hit quite the same without you here, so we're happy to have you back.
Well, it's only better when the both of us are there.
That's right.
We are back. We got another great week in news. My God, hundreds of millions worth of tokenization offerings to talk about, Kyle. I can't wait to get into it, shall we?
Look, I've been waiting with bated breath. Let's just dive right in.
Let's do it. Unfortunately, this week we will not be joined again by Nico Pantelis, our regular contributors. We couldn't get anybody in last minute, but Kyle, you're the man, you're the guy. Let's have our usual show. Let's discuss some of the biggest things that happened in the market this week, starting off with Bitfinex Securities. They actually announced in collaboration with Mikro Kapital that they'll be doing 2 tokenized bonds as part of their alternative securitization fund that we've talked about in the past. They've done offerings since last year. They recently, I believe in March, they launched on Base with Obligate, and now on Liquid, as we know, Bitfinex is popular to use. These 2 tokens will be on Liquid, raising up to 10 million. In 2 different bonds, 2 different lengths. One's like a little less than a year. The other one's like 3 years, between 10 to 13% respectively. Kyle, what do you think? This is yet again a respective issuer we already know in the market, but now continuing this trend of, hey, we're going to try different marketplaces, different blockchains. Any feedback on all this?
Yeah, well, first off, Bitfinex, yet again, with a cool and innovative offering. I think they've done a good job of bringing novel products to market that are impactful. So from that regard, exciting stuff. And then Mikro Kapital, launching funds where the focus is for small businesses and female entrepreneurs in emerging markets. A great mission, and I think an awesome use for tokenization and blockchain technology to drive more capital and more adoption into overlooked spaces where that's kind of, especially right now in the early stages of the market, where we're seeing a lot of traction, right? If you are able to raise from the JP Morgan distribution portal or whatever as a huge fund manager or something like that, you're just going to do it, right? But for a lot of these funds that are working to build and prove new concepts, new avenues, a new thesis, or a new market, tokenization offers that opportunity to have easier access into international investors and to the global recognition that is just so difficult to do on your own. So for those reasons, I'm pretty cool. I'm bullish about this one, Herwig.
Speaking of that global factor, they're based out of Luxembourg, Mikro Kapital, and their whole mission, I believe, is quite something to support. SME financing, right? They're using these bonds to go out and finance small to medium enterprises. So I think this is a great thing to see global access, if you will, into a fund or a bond like this issued by a company like Mikro Kapital.
And it seems like a pretty good time for that too, right? Small businesses right now more than ever need access to capital because the market has been a bit tighter with respect to allocations. And as we're seeing, inflation running rampant internationally, expenses are high, costs are high, margins are low. So this seems like the right time to buy if you're a fund manager.
The last thing I want to mention on this one is I completely agree with that. I'm also curious to see how a lot of these offerings end up playing out. We've now seen them use a couple different providers and blockchains. They're not the only issuer we've seen do this. Hamilton Lane is another popular example. I'm curious to see sort of, what will ultimately be the insights of, we launched this one on Base. Are there different features that come about? Was there a different, sort of interest from that community because it was used on Base versus now say Liquid, right? Which may again come with a different subset of features down the road. Or is it merely, an administration and transparency thing, an easy way to fractionally raise money for a bond, but, beyond that, it's just distributions and maybe there's no trading or anything like that planned. But this is going to be a 3-year bond. So it'll be interesting to see, for one of them at least, interesting to see how all of these different initiatives from Mikro Capital play out. Would love to learn more from their team. We'll try to get them on the show here. But moving on, Kyle, I think another pretty cool piece of news here. INX and Bakkt, specifically Bakkt being the issuer and INX helping distribute the product. They've tokenized Nvidia stock. Nvidia being, of course, I believe last year's one of the most, at least biggest, most successful stocks. This year, they're also on a tear due to the boom around AI and, of course, the underlying chips powering a lot of beyond AI, just about everything around the world. So it's been very interesting to see this rise of this now multi-trillion, or at least over $1 trillion company, right? Now they're being tokenized through INX. Of course, they're selling it, not marketing or selling it to the US. It's for international only, which is, of course, the point, I believe, Kyle, right? It's more difficult to get access to something like Nvidia when you're
like an ADR or something like that.
But of course, it's also tokenized, which brings a whole lot of other benefits compared to the traditional way of investing into Nvidia. And interestingly, Kyle, this product already also got a rating, not from one of the big three that we're used to hearing ratings from, but one of the new upstarts, Particula, which has also been tracking this space and actually started out, I believe, in carbon credits, and now they've been launching rating reports. So I actually highly recommend you go check out their abstract that they released, or go check out the full report if you can. They gave it a AA rating specifically for the robust product and legal structure as a tokenized asset. So a huge trend we're going to continue to see, I think, hopefully, if this is successful, more and more popular stocks getting tokenized. Kyle, again, would love to hear your feedback on this. I know we've seen this trend, as you just said earlier, over and over again, this time with Nvidia. So I think a little bit of a different spin, but
yeah, no, I have some fun, interesting background for anybody. Certainly, if you're listening to the show and you can't see the headlines, as you may know, we do this on YouTube. Sometimes it's fun to see our mugs, but you'd also see that this is not Bakkt as in BAKKT, which was the institutional OTC crypto trading firm. We've talked about them before. Kelly Loeffler was involved there, who was in Congress. We covered them a few times years ago on the show as they were evaluating. I think they may have been looking to work with BSTX or something like that back when T0 was working on that initiative with Box Exchange. But this is not them. This is BACKED, Bakkt Assets Limited. They are actually they're regulated out of Jersey, the country. And so a little bit of interesting intel on this Nvidia token. So we've covered tokenized stocks for years now, Herwig. When FTX famously were doing the tokenized stock thing, we called it out as being a inefficient vehicle. We didn't see how it was tied to the actual asset. Some of those questions may still persist with this because I haven't had a full chance to get the ID, but getting rated and showing that transparency is, I think, a very effective method of proving that these things do actually have a backed asset behind it and that they are not just kind of a pseudo or derivative product. The other interesting thing that I found in doing some research, I had two things for you, Herwig. One is that this is $100 million worth of this stock. So it's actually a decent asset size. This is not just, a $10 million little token that's going to try. No, it's 10 times that. And the other thing is our discussions around multi-chain assets. So this token is actually on ETH, Arbitrum, Polygon, Gnosis, Avalanche, Phantom, BNB Smart Chain, and Base. So they are offering 8 different blockchain solutions to support here, which I think really does prove the concept that in the long run, with specifically assets that are getting tokenized, real investment products, who cares which chain it's on? We'll offer it to whichever chain that you use and you prefer. But at the end of the day, you care about investing in the Nvidia stock, and that's the thing that sells this offering. And I think that this goes back to that point about tokenization we talk about with issuers all the time, that just doing a tokenization isn't good enough. You need to have a good investment product that people want to buy. And it seems like Bakkt has done that with Nvidia.
Multi-chain is possible. We saw Franklin Templeton very similarly do the same strategy with their Benjis, I believe on almost the exact same chains or a little less of them.
Sure.
And as we've talked about on the show, Kyle, I think we can say we were one of the first to say this. We know multi-chain assets are the future. It's going to be inevitable. It's too easy to manage anyway, even if they're on different chains at the end of the day, thanks to the whole structure and ecosystem of RWAs and security tokens. But I do want to point out and highlight just what you were saying earlier, just about what we saw in the past with FTX, using them as an example. They offer tokenized stocks. We were tracking it. Grayscale, Tesla, several other popular companies were trading in the millions of dollars every day. So there was clear demand behind this product. But you were skeptical, and we were skeptical because they were using a provider. Although it seemed to be a licensed provider, they didn't necessarily reveal how much that provider had in their float, right? If there's 100 million worth of stock, did Bakkt buy that 100 million worth of stock?
Yeah,
someone underwriting that? What is that process, and how one-to-one tied is that? Similar to the concept around stable coins and what's backing them, right? So I think you bring up a great point, Kyle, that whenever we see structures like this, we want to get in, you want to do your research. You want to make sure that this thing is really tied. I'm not saying anything specifically about this Bakkt issuance specifically. I'm very excited for it. And
it is MiFID compliant, by the way. So
yeah, of course, 100%. To your point earlier, again, the rating, I think, really goes a long way here to suggest that, okay, they're doing everything they can in order to make sure this product is available in the right way to investors. So, of course, always do your own research, but I think this was a really cool one to see. It's got a marquee asset behind it. So there's going to be demand for this thing. You've got a great issuer and distributor with INX for this thing. And of course, it's now been rated by Particula. So I'm excited to see how this does, Kyle.
I totally agree. What do we have next, Herwig?
Well, we're going to head over to the UAE, where Mantra, the layer 1 blockchain for RWAs, is once again in the news. They were my company of the week before I had to take a break last week. Specifically, this time around, they're in the news again to tokenize $500 million, Kyle, in real estate tokenizations. It will be done over multiple tranches. But they're working with MAG Group, MAG, out of the UAE, which actually has over $5 billion in real estate offerings. So 500 million obviously goes to show you they're just starting with 10% roughly to start trying this out. But as we know, Mantra is very DeFi friendly. In fact, investors will have access to a vault where they'll be able to earn yield and stable coins from the OM tokens that they're launching. Where they'll get, supposedly, they say, an 8% return from stable coins that they'll also further augment with OM tokens. Their initial vault will also be over collateralized, they say, by a $75 million mega mansion at the Ritz-Carlton residence in Dubai. So, of course, this is, again, being backed by a major real estate group out of the UAE. So this suggests that, this is very legit, and we're going to hopefully see a lot of traction behind this. Last thing I'll say, Kyle, before I hand it over to you, is the UAE really starting to make moves. We saw them in the past be very vocal and pro blockchain, but now we've seen the engines get moving this year, Kyle. I'm really seeing a lot of offerings coming out of Dubai, a lot of activity out of the UAE in general, which I think is great because there's a lot of money and a lot of assets over there.
Yeah, I'm excited about this one. I think I don't know that much about the Middle Eastern real estate market. The question I'll have here is whether this is 500 million of existing real estate that's been actually valued at 500 million, or if that's the target for the fund or for the project that they're building. Those can be two very different valuation strategies, if you will. And we've seen this in the past where you might have someone that has a large goal of reaching X, Y, or Z amount of assets, but that sometimes can prove to be ambitious. So it will be interesting to see if this is 500 million of real revenue generating assets, which would be amazing and fantastic to drive real value to token holders, or is this kind of a future issuance, a planned issuance, something like that, which is still fine. I think there's an interesting distinction to be made there. Wasn't quite enough information for me to understand that based off of this short press release, but Mantra making moves, and I think that we got to applaud them for trying to bring assets on chain.
Yeah, to the tune of hundreds of millions with partners like this, we're going to see a thriving market. I love to see it, Kyle. And you make a good point once again regarding just the structure. As I mentioned, Mantra and this MAG issuer, it looks like they're going a little bit more DeFi friendly with their approach. Trying to set up a vault and offer yield in that exposure, as opposed to say some of the other offerings where if you go to like a Red Swan, for example, and you sort of invest in sort of a traditional model as an LP usually into a specific real estate offering. So very different models. That's the beautiful thing about tokenization is you're going to see all of these different models come to life.
Totally.
So I love to see it, Kyle. One more that I think we have to cover on the show. We're going to head over to Albania, where T-Blocks is set to tokenize 235 million euros worth of assets in the Balkans and Albania as well. Renewable energy, luxury real estate. They're saying yacht marinas and other types of use cases. So very luxury real estate. And they're targeting professional investors and accredited investors. So, this isn't necessarily sort of a non or open retail deal. But they're leveraging blockchain. They're supposedly doing it compliantly in the EU. Of course, the Balkans and Albania are typically underlooked when it comes to potentially as investment targets. And they, T-Blocks has actually been around announcing quite a bit of other partnerships. One with Jared Kushner, as well as several other variety of different projects all over. So this looks like a very big move. As we just said, 500 million out of the UAE. Now another almost 250 million US out of Albania and the Balkans. So Kyle, big week for real estate tokenizations. Any thoughts on this one?
I like the renewable energy angle as well. I think that in that region particularly, there's always demand for energy resources. I know that a lot of Europe has consistently had to bring outside vendors, whether that's other country partners or things like that. So I'm sure that there's a lot of demand for energy across, especially as the world begins to get more and more developed with respect to technology. That just means more and more power that everybody needs in order to make it happen. So that makes sense to me. Same kind of high level question as the 500 million, right? Where is our $250 million luxury real estate in Albania? I don't know much about Albania, but that's certainly an ambitious property. So we'll see if they can bring that to market. That's exciting though, that to your point, this is a global initiative. This is an operation that any investor can get into regions that were traditionally overlooked. And I'm sure there's a lot of wealth and success in Albania. And this is definitely not an opportunity or a market that it would be easy to invest into. So if you were an expert in some of these Eastern European countries, and you knew these markets well, you knew that real estate well, you still might have a difficult time actually getting involved to invest in these types of properties, in these types of opportunities. With tokenization, that changes drastically. The other thing is, interested to see what blockchain they use. I don't think they mentioned that in the release. So that's maybe something that they're still considering, or maybe they are going to subscribe to the multi-chain asset type of methodology. But it'll be cool to see, are they building something in-house, or are they going to work with one of our trusted partners, or are they going to use a public chain?
Yeah, it wasn't easy to discern what they're using if they put it out there, but they keep mentioning DLT and blockchain technology. So either they're using buzzwords, or they have something that they're working on, presumably on that front. But could suggest that it could be private permissioned. We know in the EU things are a little bit stricter sometimes, especially depending on which licensing you have and other things involved. So. Of course, always, folks, do your research on these offerings when you're checking them out. But another lively week in the market movements, Kyle.
Just a casual $1 billion of new issuances.
Yeah, no big deal. The market is alive and well and thriving. We got more news, in fact, coming up in the Token Debrief. Our news to get into this week, folks. So we're going to kick it off with a major headline from Fidelity International and Signum and the DTCC, who have all partnered with Chainlink to bring NAV data on chain. NAV standing for net asset value. Of course, this is an important indicator to the book value of a fund that is reported to investors. And Chainlink is the underlying protocol that helps stamp this information on the blockchain. And they were likely chosen for their CCIP interoperability capabilities to be able to support sharing this type of key information onto multiple chains. And although Signum and Fidelity International use Chainlink on a custom build here, it looks like the DTCC is working with Chainlink on productizing this for mutual funds, which they will call SmartNav. And next, we saw an announcement from StegX and Black Manta Capital, who have teamed up so that StegX can leverage Black Manta Capital's comprehensive regulatory expertise and licensing for StegX's next-gen marketplace, which is designed for real estate tokens. We'll try to get more info on this for you next week from the source, but we're going to stay here in Europe, where we also saw DigiShares join the ranks of tokenization platforms that have officially joined the European Blockchain Sandbox's second cohort. And as we discussed recently with similar news from Bricken, the value for platforms like DigiShares to be in these sandboxes are immense due to the oversight and support you get from the regulators themselves in order to be able to do what you want to do in the tokenization space without any fear of repercussions. And DigiShares has been a long-time leader in this industry, so this entry makes a lot of sense. And speaking of another popular tokenization provider based out of Europe, we're talking about Tokeny now, which announced this week that they have integrated the IOTA EVM blockchain, a layer 2 on ETH they created, which Tokeny, of course, has been a leader in for RWA smart contract development. As IOTA looks to push further and louder into tokenizing companies and assets, integrations like these are critical to offer issuers the option of using IOTA through the tokenization providers that are being chosen, or vice versa, the opportunity for platforms to win over issuers who are set on using IOTA, in this case, their EVM blockchain. And moving on to Asia, we saw this week's leading Japanese investment bank, SBI, partner with Korea's third largest life insurance firm, Kyobo Life. The announcement was short on details specifically regarding any offerings or anything like that, but they plan to work together to say what they say are unique tokenized investments to the market there. So given the size of these two players, I have no doubt that they are cooking up something awesome. And last month in the UAE, we mentioned that Zanbank had teamed up with Layer 1 blockchain Mantra. And this week, Zanbank announced that they were selected by Taurus for custody, tokenization, and blockchain services. So this is significant because Taurus is also backed by Deutsche Bank, Credit Suisse, and many other prominent firms. And the Swiss-based firm says this partnership improves the quality of their services specifically for institutional grade investors. And finally, I wanted to shout out Kyle's latest blockchain venture, Paxum. And Paxum is another layer 1 blockchain for RWAs that recently announced, it seems on LinkedIn, a new president, Ryan Kirkley. So Ryan has a deep background in both crypto and venture capital, but he's coming back to the founder life, he revealed. And Paxum also has now over $2 billion in RWAs signed onto the protocol before they've even launched out of stealth, apparently. So that is incredible stuff. Congrats, Ryan and Kyle. And that's it for the Token Debrief, everyone. Let's move on to the next segment to see who specifically Kyle and I thought deserved the most attention.
And just like that, over $1 billion in new issuances brought to market in just 1 week. And this is just another week on the block in the security token ecosystem. But of course, we couldn't end our show without the most important segment of the week, leading up to what some are saying is the most illustrious award in the world. That is the Company of the Year award, which you only get if you're nominated for Companies of the Week. My personal favorite segment, where Herwig and I take two companies that we wanted to highlight for doing really cool things in the space. And of course, they get nominated for our Company of the Year award at the end of the year. Herwig, it's great to have you back. I did this on my own last week and it just wasn't the same. Who's your winner this week?
I know, who knows? Whoever I might have picked last week if I had won could have been the Company of the Year, but alas, we'll never know. But maybe this week's winner will be that company of the year winner, Kyle. So there was obviously a lot to be excited about in this industry, a lot going on, a lot of big issuances, from all over the world, a lot of very novel use cases. So this was tricky this week. But I had to give it to what I think is critical infrastructure, what I think is going to be very important for the market moving forward, for investors moving forward. And I'm particularly excited about this to nominate my company of the week, Particula, for their AA rating, specifically for providing a rating in the first place to backed Nvidia offering this week. Of course, I'm sure there was some initiative also potentially from backed side, but I think this is great because Particula is planning to, now they've launched these ratings. You can see that there is a similar structure to it. It's something that's familiar to the industry. This was a AA rating, I believe they gave to Back's issuance here. And they have a very detailed reasoning why. We kept talking on this show, Kyle. How many times did we say, got to do your own research, go figure this out, right? Particula does a lot of that work for you. They verify a lot of these details, and then they organize that all into one, neat little report and rating. That's extremely important for investor confidence, to speed them to being able to make a decision on whether they want to participate, as well as mandates and other things, right? Some funds and other managers, they can't even participate in anything that hasn't been rated. And we know this industry, Morningstar, Fitch, and the other rating agencies out there, they are the ones who run Moody's. They run this space, right? There aren't really too many other providers. So I'd love to see that in this new world of finance, there's going to be new ways to rate products, I believe, as a result of more data being on chain, more information from the underlying product being on different marketplaces and things like that. So I believe the big three, if you will, rating agencies are going to have to start to adapt and evolve because companies like Particula are going to come for their lunch. And I love to see it. We're going to here to support it. That's why they're my company of the week, Kyle.
Great choice, Herwig. I'm a big fan of tokenized stocks in general. This has been something that we've found fascinating for many years now. So great to see Back bringing that to market, and really cool to see Particula getting involved and adding to that diligence. To your point, it is hard sometimes to do diligence on a lot of these deals. You've got the blockchain side, you've got the asset, you've got everything in between. It's trading, it's on markets, it's unfamiliar. So companies like Particula are really doing super important work for investors who are the ones that potentially stand to gain or lose in the event that they misunderstand or there's fraud or those types of things in the market. And it also really helps the companies. So a company like Bakkt, I'm sure, really appreciates having another business that does the diligence on their deal and can fact check a lot of these things and provide those resources to outside investors and to guys like us that want to cover it on the show. We certainly feel like we're more prepared to talk about the deals when we can feel confident about it. So Particula did a great job. I also like their logo and A+ pun.
Thank you, Kyle. I'm glad you agree with my choice, but of course I am eager to learn about yours.
Yeah, it wasn't mine. I did pick my own for this week, Herwig, and I was pretty excited about it. In our earlier segment, that was Mikro Kapital, M-I-K-R-O, and a K on the capital. And so Mikro Kapital has now launched 2 different tokenized funds. They're getting very involved in the industry. Their strategy is to use blockchain to increase accessibility for investment products. And they're planning to deploy into emerging markets, into women entrepreneurs, into small businesses. We talked about this quite a bit at the top of the show, but I'm impressed with their success. They're working with Bitfinex, who has done a good job bringing security tokens to market. And they're working with the Liquid network, which I believe is the L2 for Bitcoin, or it's something along, there's a relationship there to some degree, whether it's technically a L2 or not. I maybe could fact check that, but they are doing 2 different, these are bonds. So there's a 11-month and a 36-month bond that they're looking to deploy and then generate that rate back to investors. So for those reasons, Mikro Kapital getting involved in the tokenization space, they were my company of the week winner, Herwig.
Yeah, they're a fantastic choice, Kyle. They're a model use case, a noble cause. Obviously, love the idea of this money being used to facilitate and be deployed to support small to medium businesses. We're entrepreneurs ourselves. We also know just how important small businesses are to the economy and creating jobs. So Micro Capital, I think, is doing something absolutely fantastic here. But I say they're a model case study because, again, they're now doing this on Liquid through Bitfinex, but previously they used Obligate and Base, and they've done a couple other initiatives. I think they're a fantastic issue. They've been around since 2008, by the way, Kyle. So they know what they're doing. They're not just sort of an upstart, but they have what I think have done a phenomenal job in terms of understanding and applying tokenization to be able to tap in now through to this fractionalization and tap into new access to capital to continue to grow their business. So great choice, Kyle, and congratulations, Micro Capital.
Yeah, I think blockchain works great here because if you're paying out dividends to investors or coupon interest rates to investors, with tokenization, you can have the smart contract just kind of, you put the money into escrow and then boom, it just kind of funnels out to everyone. And I think that that's a really efficient use of blockchain and smart contracts is for the debt markets. So hopefully these products work out well and can prove that concept in practice.
Easy enough. Well, Kyle, those are our companies of the week, which means that's our show. Thank you to everybody who watched all the way through. We hope you continue to see you next week again on Friday. I'll be here. Kyle will be here. But of course, in the meantime, while you miss us, go check out stm.co. We got all the trading data, all the latest news. We got cool charts and signals on what's happening in the market. New listings getting added all the time. This market cap is going bonanza. We got a lot of great reports as well. So dig into our research when you get a chance. Any closing thoughts, Kyle?
Happy to be here. Let's run it back next week. Thanks everybody for watching.
Well, happy tokenizing.